Welcome to Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success podcast, providing business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs with the 3 INs: insights, inspirations, and intentional actions. Delivered through monologues and dialogues, we address topics like leadership, productivity, time management, work-life balance, and challenges like stress, conflict, mental health, and much more. Please do not hold back from suggesting specific topics and guests you would like on this podcast. Greetings and welcome to this episode of Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success. And this week is another week where I have a guest on, and it's a great privilege for me to welcome on board Lloyd. So Lloyd, give us a little bit of a sense of who you are and what on earth you're doing in your life.
Yeah, hi, Mikkel. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here. I'm Lloyd. I'm the calm guy. I have a business here in Tauranga as a men's wellbeing coach. So I support men navigating the complexities of burnout and stress, recovering and resetting from that space, finding a life that's a little bit more aligned to what their ideal version is, without all the pretending or manning up and pretending everything's fine. That's what I do in my day job, so to speak. I'm also a father of 2 beautiful children. I'm married, and I also have a podcast of my own, which is called What No One Told Us. It's a space where I meet with another coach, and we're just 2 regular blokes talking about our experiences of navigating 21st century modern life as a man, parenting, fatherhood, relationships, purpose, meaning, career, and all those themes around masculinity and what it means to be a man in today's world. So that's a really exciting space for me, and I enjoy those conversations. We show up without any sense of science or expertise. We're really just coming as we are. And showing up with authenticity and trying to be vulnerable as well, I guess, about what's really going on for us and sharing our experiences. So that's a really cool space. So I'm really enjoying that. Apart from that, I love yoga. I'm really into mindfulness in that space, being in nature. I've been known to throw a tennis racket around with here at the local club, and those are all, I guess, downtime fun activities that fill my cup.
Sounds fantastic, Lloyd, and also from the sound of that, my sense is like, yes, you got children. You got a wife and you're running a business, working with men going through challenges. That all sounds to me like you're the kind of person who have experienced what you're talking about. Like you have experienced challenges and things in your life, which I think is often the case for coaches. And like myself, become coaches because we're going through stuff and we want to share that with others. So based on that, my guess is you will be able to share with us some interesting stories about mental fitness, which is what this is about. And as our audience probably know by now, I like to hear some stories of the 2 sides of the coin. The side where we end up in some trouble or deep shit because we didn't have the mental fitness to deal with the challenge in front of us. And then, of course, the other side of the coin is where we are creating some incredible achievements and successes, even though it was challenging, but we had some mental fitness that was high enough at the time to deal with those challenges in a positive way. So Are you happy to share with us? Let's start maybe on the side of the things that didn't go so well, and then we can move into the other side after that.
Yeah. Yeah, when things didn't go so well, yeah, that takes me back to the earliest stages of my business. So for a long time, I was in hospitality, over 20 years. And that culminated in in having my own business. It was probably the dream for a long time. And I finally got to a space where I had my business and had a busy cafe here in Tauranga, opposite Tauranga Hospital. Um, I had a young family. I was married, a few properties, friends. I felt like I had some status. I was living the dream, so to speak. Um, and I was also burning the candle at both ends. I had very little understanding at that stage of awareness or self-awareness or self-compassion, or any self-care routines, boundaries, things like that. I was working long hours, um, and I was most of the time ignoring some of the inner stuff that was going on for me. And I was developing some fairly unhealthy habits along the way to sort of mask down and numb a lot of that stuff. I was just, you know, keeping myself busy with with the business. And I got to a stage of burnout very quickly from living this life. I was stretched well beyond my means. And like I said, I had no tools, Mikhail. I had no tools at my disposal at that stage to manage some of these more complex things that were going on for me. And in amongst that, there was some unresolved grief from the recent passing, unexpected passing of my father, who lost his battle with mental health and addiction. And I, it all came to a head in the most unpleasant and challenging way.
Mm.
It got pretty bad there for a while, to the point where I was no longer the driver of my life. I was a helpless passenger at best. And my business was running, but I was no longer present. I was most of the time at home, and I couldn't even get out of bed. It had become that bad. I was riddled with anxiety and depression. Um, my wife was trying to keep up with the kids in the house and do as much as she could with the business while I was going through what felt like a complete nervous breakdown for me. Um, and like I said, I found myself in a space where I started to fear that I was going to head in the same direction as my old man. And that was a horrible space for me to be in. I was completely under the influence of my thoughts and paralyzed basically by fear. I had built this business and I had got this perfect life on the outside, but inside I was full of pressure, full of fear, trying to hold it all together. I was burnt out. I was addicted to prescription medication, caffeine, alcohol, cigarettes. It was a pretty bleak story. Not sleeping, and just lying in bed staring at the ceiling, basically paralyzed, couldn't move.
Mm.
Um, the breaking point came. when one morning my wife came in and she sat on the edge of the bed and she looked at me and I'll never forget the look in her face. It was just sort of a blank look, like she cried all her tears basically. She was at her end. She really didn't know what to do next. But she said these words to me and she said, Lloyd, if you don't get yourself together and take control of this, I'm going to leave you. To that point, I'd given up basically. I'd given up on myself. I'd given up on my business. I was lost. I was in a really bad space. I was willing to sacrifice my life, but I wasn't willing to lose what I felt was the most important thing in my life,
Mm.
my wife and my kids. And I knew at that stage when I looked in her eyes that that was a distinct possibility. And well, I had to wriggle one toe, wriggle another toe, get the one foot moving, get that foot on the floor out of the effing bed, and then pause and go, well, if I've got that leg out of bed, maybe I can get the other one out of bed. And
Mm.
then when I got the other leg out of bed, I sat myself up and I thought, well, I've got this far. I might as well see if I can make it to the bathroom. And this might sound a little bit dramatic, but literally, this is what it was like.
Mm.
That was a series of tiny triumphs just to get from there into the shower, have a shave, and try and pull myself back in to the day,
Mm.
get some momentum going.
Wow.
It took me 2 years to recover, and there was a lot of support that came as well with that. I joined an anxiety support group for 9 weeks. That was the first step. I started doing yoga, started to discover things like breathing, like, oh, what is this thing called breathing? What is this thing called mindfulness? What is this paying attention to my body? What is this awareness? What are all these concepts? And I started to learn all these things through my journey with yoga, with mindfulness, and I started to get back into my business, little steps, little tiny steps. Uh, Repaired the faith and trust with my wife, my family, and started to get back on track again.
Mm.
So that was a very significant point in my life where I felt like I wasn't in control of my mental fitness. I was totally and utterly in control, out of control, and being run by my thoughts and my fears, um, pressure, and all those negative emotions that
Mm.
came with it.
Thank you so much, Lloyd, for your vulnerability that you talked about earlier and for sharing that. And um, what an incredible story. And unfortunately, um, you're not the only one who is going through that. Everybody else will have slightly different story, different texture to it. But unfortunately, the burnout for business owners is at an all-time high at the moment.
Hmm.
So I really appreciate your honesty in that, and I feel a bit emotional in it myself as well because the same thing happened to me when
Hmm.
our kids was fairly little, and I ended up in depression. And my wife came to me one day and said, "You're gonna sort your shit out, or you have to leave." So,
Yeah.
like, at least your wife said she would leave and you could stay. I was told I had to leave or sort myself out. I don't know which one is better or worse. I still feel a bit teary-eyed from that because when you shared that, it just reminded me of that.
Mm.
And I'd say kudos to both of us
Yeah.
because we both did what we could at the time with the tools we had, and in that we learned something, and and somewhere along the way recognized that we ended up in this situation because we didn't have the mental fitness. When you mentioned the word boundaries, we didn't have the mental fitness to set the boundaries because it takes mental fitness to be able to do that and to stand by those boundaries and burning the candle each end, as you said. Again, a person who is really mentally fit won't do that. They will recognize, oh, I can do this for a day or two, but I can't keep doing this. It's not good for me. It's not good for my business. It's not good for my family. It's not good for anything. And that again takes mental fitness, and then the vulnerability of you going and talking with somebody in this to get help with dealing with this. That also takes mental fitness that you didn't have enough of at the time. So you just dug in and then pulled yourself under the blanket, so to speak, in the bed and try to run life from there. And as we know, it is not possible. It won't work. So again, kudos to our wives for again loving us enough to come out and say, hey, the best way I can support you right now is by kicking your ass. I can't do this for you. You have to do it yourself, but I'm going to kick your ass and get you into gear. So thank you so much
Must be an
for,
incredibly difficult thing for her to do and for your wife to do, I would have imagined, right? A lot of bravery and courage in that too.
oh, totally. So what we could flip it around and say they had the mental fitness at that moment in time to to do that, yeah, because that would take that, and you're absolutely right. And I'm sure they were thinking about that for a number of days. How am I going to do it? I'm going to do this, and then eventually, they saw that that's the only way they could see forward. So good on them for that, and thank you again so much for that story. So let's flip the coin to the other side, and here's some success you created in your life, and that you created that because you had the mental fitness to deal with the challenges. And they can be a story from when you were a teenager or years ago, and be a story from yesterday. So I will let you pick one that you're comfortable sharing with us.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks, Mikhail. Now to the happy story. Well, it's all happy, isn't it? I mean, it's all learning, isn't it? It's all a process, right? Good and bad. But I'm going to still stick within the realms of my business, if that's okay, because I'm going to take you forward a little bit to 2022 and paint a slightly different picture, although some similar kind of challenges. Um, the difference, I think, at this point was that I did have some tools to be able to respond in a different way, as opposed to the earlier time in my life where I let everything completely implode and get on top of me. 2022, for a lot of people, it was still very much the middle of COVID. I was managing my business. It was very, very successful by that stage. Before COVID, we were looking to open another cafe, another business. It was an exciting time. We didn't go through with that because of COVID, thank goodness. Yet I still found myself managing a business in the middle of mandates, vaccinations, financial uncertainties, staff pressures. The staff themselves were going through difficult stuff. We were all having to work at a frenetic pace, often understaffed because we were being forced to stay home if we had the slightest, symptoms. Anyone that's listening will remember what it was like, a very, very difficult time. And as a business owner, extremely challenging for me to, I guess, front that. Someone's got to make the hard decisions at the end of the day. And some of those hard decisions really weighed on me. Um, right in the middle of that, I lost my sister. Very similar circumstances. She passed unexpectedly, lost her battle with mental health and addiction. And once that was thrown into the mix, I was now navigating grief. And due to the environment that was going on around me, I had very little space to be able to process that.
Mm.
Now, I was fortunate enough at that stage, Mikhail, to have spent almost a year and a half in your services as my coach. We had met sometime earlier. And for that, I'm extremely grateful because by then, when I met these crises and challenges in my life, I learned, I had a good understanding of the good things about me and my strengths and my skills, but also more importantly, my shortcomings. And the default kind of, I call them noisy neighbors, the little chatterboxes in the background that try to take you away from your true intention, your true self, right? And I wasn't willing at that stage to let myself be dominated the way that I had been back in 2016 when my wife sat down on the bed and gave me that very, very powerful ultimatum. Whilst I was going through another challenge, oh my goodness, here we go again. Now I've lost my sister and I've got to go through this all over again. I was in a different space, Mikhail. I had the tools now. I had the mental fitness.
Mm.
And I knew that I could apply those tools every day. And that started in the morning, getting up early, journaling, doing my breathing exercises, moving my body, setting my intention for the day, meeting the day, meeting the challenges, but in a different way rather than reacting to them and then potentially responding in a negative way. Something had shifted in me. I could now see challenges as opportunities for growth, for learning new ways to do things,
Mm.
right? New things about myself,
Mm.
reserves that I never knew I actually had. And I tell you, Mikhail, over those over that period and the challenges and the stress and pressure that I was under, I found out I had extra. I had reserves.
Mm.
And I'm really, really stoked to sit here and say that I got through that period.
Mm.
It wasn't always pretty, but I'm grateful that I met you and that I had an experience of your coaching to be able to get me to that stage where I could deal with challenges and deal with life in a different way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Another wonderful story. And thank you for the acknowledgement of the work you did with me and the impact that had as well. Which is again about building that mental fitness, which from my viewpoint, it's there and available for all of us. Like we have it. And as you said, you discovered there were some resources there and things available. And also what I like about, again, you're sharing is sharing both of the sides that you discovered more about the core natural strength that you had and how to use more of that in your everyday life, including business and at home, but also acknowledging the weaknesses that were your kind of natural weaknesses and say, okay, so those things I'm not so good at. I'm going to deal with that in a different way. And just acknowledge that I'm never going to be a master at that. I'll do what I need to do, and I'll try and encourage other people to step more into that in your business. And I love your term noisy neighbor. It's like some people call it the monkey mind, like it's great to get a new language on that. The noisy neighbor, I think I'm going to start using that. Uh, because noisy neighbors can be really annoying, aren't they? And
Absolutely.
and you can ignore them for a little while, but then they still get on your nerves. So, and another thing that you mentioned that I think is worth sort of reiterating here is that every day. It is that getting into a pattern, whether it's a morning routine or evening routine or little breaks during the day. If we want to be really good at managing, say, ourselves, we got to practice. And if we're going to be really good at golf, it's not enough to play golf once a month. Like we have to actually go and practice. And what you share with us is that you got into some practices
Mhm.
that by sticking to them every day started creating again the strength and the mental. That's for me is part of building that mental fitness. I would love for you just to talk a little bit more into one thing you mentioned but didn't go into at all, if that's okay with you. And you were talking about staff, is that your staff, of course, with the COVID, were going through know their own personal things, and then they have to come to work, and of course that impacts. So their mental fitness will impact on any business owner's business. And since this podcast is for business owners and business leaders, I would love if you could talk a little bit into your experience of you growing your mental fitness and how that impacted on how you were dealing with staff, and then how that might, if in any way, have impacted on their mental fitness. Are you happy to talk into that a bit?
Yeah, I think I'll come back to again that point around the noisy neighbors, and I started to notice mine. I had more awareness of mine, and what I also realized was that we all had them, right?
Oh, so it's not just you and me, I guess.
No, funnily enough, no, we all have these noisy neighbors, and my staff were no exception.
Mm,
Um, Understanding that whilst they had noisy neighbors, their noisy neighbors may look a little different to mine,
mm,
right? Um, and pitching that alongside some acceptance and understanding, empathy, compassion for what they're going through, being willing to sit with them and listen, um, and allow them the space to screw up, to get it wrong, and use my own discernment to be able to navigate that with them and balance it between a space of leadership, but also humanity,
mm,
right? So we're all human. We've all got our shit.
mm,
I
mm,
hope I can say that. Can bleep it out later. We've all we've all got our stuff, and we all bring different things to the table. Once I realized that I wasn't my role to fix them or mold them or mend them or shape them or bend them to the way that I wanted them to be, that
mm,
I could work with what it is that they had going really well for them. And then with some gentle encouragement, compassion, and um, space, allow them to get to know their own noisy neighbors in a way that they could start to take charge of their own mental fitness. And that didn't always work well. There were some situations where um, staff weren't willing to go there, weren't willing to go into that space. And that was okay because this journey's not for everyone, right? Um, but more importantly, in terms of my role, my leadership, it took the pressure off me needing to try to fix them or get them to perform to a certain level because it was their their journey to go on.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think that's we already starting talking into kind of my next question. Um, I think for any business leader, business owner listening to this, there's some really good advice there. And you mentioned some good words like empathy and that. And for me, it's like engagement. Like
Mm,
if you want a team really working well, a business team working well, there needs to be an engagement both ways.
mm.
And if the leader can't make that happen, it's not likely that the staff is going to make it happen. So, no good on you for then taking your understanding and then um, giving your staff an opportunity to experience that for those who were open to it. And then also acknowledging that some people are not open to that, but they will still be open to something else. There's always going to be something that we're open to because when we go to work for however many hours a week, we don't want to go to work and feel miserable. We may go
No.
to work and feel miserable, but that's not what we want.
Mhm.
We want to go there and feel good. So again, as leaders, for us to find different ways, and I love you using the language leader because there's also the language manager. And in the situation you were in, sometimes you need to be the manager and manage the schedule and manage all the deliveries and all of that, manage the cafe. And other times you need to be a leader. And I think that's a challenge that a lot of business owners of small to medium businesses are going, oh, well, am I a leader now? Am I a manager? No, what is the difference? How do I do that? So I don't know if you have any feedback into that in your own experience of management and leadership.
I think a lot of it does come with experience as well. Getting to know your team, and know them as human beings. So know which buttons to press and which buttons not to press, so things don't blow up in your face. Um, I think what I would say into that is to, whenever you need to make that decision between um, taking a harder line and being a manager or being a leader, I think you need to really spend some time with yourself and ground down, find your center, and really trust your intuition and your experience
Mhm.
with the proviso that you don't always have to get it right.
Ah, no, we don't have.
No, which for a long time I didn't know, mostly 40 years actually, Mikhail. Um,
And that's mental fitness for you again, isn't it? That it takes mental fitness to accept that reality that I don't have to always get it right because reality is we won't always get it right. And going, it's actually okay not to get it right. The question then is, what do I do after that? Do I beat myself up? Do I beat somebody else up? Or do I actually learn from that mistake and then grow from it, which also takes mental fitness. So I think this leads us into my next question for you, is to share with us some tools for our audience on how did you grow your mental fitness? And I know some of the growth that most of us have comes by itself, comes through hardship, but I also um, guess that there would have been some, you can go back in your life and look at some specific things you did, whether again when you were a teenager or yesterday or anywhere in between. So let us hear a few good, good tools and that you have gained along the way.
yeah, it was probably a few people that are not going to like what I'm going to say first off, but get up early. Don't sleep in. Um, not just for the sake because everyone says the 5 a.m. club. You want to be champion of the world. You need to get up at 5 and you need to do this, and this. But I'm telling you, as a man, getting up and carving out even half an hour of time before the rest of the house wakes up, your
Mm.
kids and the wife, and the day starts is gold.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, that's definitely number one. So I always make sure I get up before everybody else. And I'll do some simple things like moving the body, um, a little bit of journaling. My favorite practice is to just sit down and stare at the wall and do nothing and allow my brain just to ease into the day.
Mm.
Um, Maybe a couple of one of my favorite things that I like to do is a couple of those New York Times mind puzzles. Also, just to get the cognition going. Connections is one of my favorite ones. And there's Wordle. Probably most people know Wordle. Um, those little things are important starters for my day and set the tone for how the rest of the day's going to go. So a little bit of light movement, um, definitely some breakfast, some fluid, and carving out some time just for you in that space before the day starts. Anyone that's got kids will know that that's a busy time of the morning,
Mm.
getting everyone organized out the door, making work, early meetings, rah-de-rah. If you start the day this way on a nice equilibrium, it will set the tone for how the rest of your day will go. I guarantee it.
Mm.
Um, like I said, yoga's been a huge one for me. And having yoga as a practice to be able to go to throughout the day is always a wonderful thing. But yoga doesn't have to always look like rolling out a mat and going through the various asanas. The concept of yoga is really just combining breath and movement. And you can do that sitting in your chair at the office just by taking a moment to take some deep breaths, a few little mild stretches, and creating a nice segment or shift from the busyness of your day. So I definitely recommend taking moments or pockets throughout your day where you again are just carving out a little bit of time for yourself to allow your body and your mind just to relax and come back into the present moment because she's fairly fast paced out there at the moment, isn't it? I mean, it's go, 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 and there's distractions and notifications and, bills, and then the kids are calling, needing you something, and then the boss is hounding you for this project to be handed in. And, it's there's a lot coming at you. So, um, once I started to learn that it was okay for me to start to carve out pockets for myself and put myself first, everything else in my life started to benefit. My
Mm.
work got better, my relationships got smoother. I found that I had a little more time and energy at the end of the day. Not a lot, but
Mm.
something to be able to just give back. Maybe it's my kids, maybe it's, you know, being the last person that they see before they go to bed.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be a long storybook. Dad, read me a story, and then you're like, half asleep. Oh God, just even being there and just giving them a kiss and a hug and saying, "Hey, look, how was your day?" And
Mm.
um, that
And,
is enough. Um,
mm. And I think that's what kids want. That they just want us there. Um, and it's in my experience a really important part. And again, that helps their mental fitness. And
mm,
thank you for those stories. And what I call those things, I call them meditation snacks. And I
mm,
know meditation for most people, you're going to sit on a cushion and cross-legged and do all this for half an hour. No, you can do it while you're driving. You can do it while you're sitting in the office, and you just take a 30-second meditation snack, and it just again it shift. Because as you said, when we get into this busy life, the brain just goes with it, and then
mm,
it just goes at 100 miles an hour.
mm,
And before we shift from one task to another, from one email to another, just having a 10-second or 30-second just pause, it just allows for the brain just to go, oh, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, all right. Oh, yeah, I'm okay. And then it moves into the next task in a calm, more peaceful place, which then means what we do next, we're actually going to do better. And if that's
Mm.
connected with our kids, we're actually going to be with our kids, even though it might be a short time. Instead of we're with our kids, we're thinking about this problem, and then what about dinner, and then we're going to do this, and I got this project tomorrow, and oh shit, I forgot that. So meditation, snacking, or taking I think you called it pauses, these little pauses. And
Mm.
again, thank you for the morning, like the morning routine. That's something I find both in my own life, but also in my coaching of people is when they start doing something that doesn't need to be long, but just
Mm.
something to start the day with the mind in a positive place, which is again a much better mental fitness place. So thank you for those sharings. Very, very valuable. What I love to finish with in these episodes is just a brief story from my guest about transformation, simply because I love transformation. Change is good. I like change as long as it's positive. But if I can pick between change and transformation, I'm definitely going to pick transformation. So have you got a story of a transformation in your life that you're happy to share with us?
Yeah, well, uh, with transformation, I guess life is one big transformation, isn't it? From the time we're born until this very moment where we're changing and growing but that's not everyone, right? I mean, some people in life don't change, they don't grow, they just stay the same. Um, and for whatever reason, I'm not knocking that, for whatever reason that is, that's okay. For me, I've gone through a few transformations, and one of the probably the most significant transformations started around 2020, in COVID times, and um, that was a period where I started to question if this was it. Existential questions, I guess you could say, as we all went into that initial 7 week lockdown. We were thrust from the busyness of chaos of life into complete stillness and being housebound and a pandemic around us. And there was a lot of time to slow down and reflect on where we're all at individually in our lives. And it's kind of like waking up from a bit of a dream, really. You're like, whoa, where am I? And how did I get here? That was very much what it was like for me in that time. And I started to have these questions. Is there more? Is there more to me? Um, that coincided with reading a couple of um, life-changing books, I'll call them. One of them was by Robin Sharma, the monk who sold his Ferrari. And there were a couple of really key things that I took from that book. Um, and one of them was learning about meditation and learning about going a little deeper into our essence and understanding a little bit more about ourselves. Um, and at that point, I felt like I needed some guidance. I needed a mentor to be able to. I knew something was changing, and I was excited about that change, but I was also really nervous and uncertain about what was going on for me because I could feel like there was a shift happening. Going back into work and the business and the cafe, I was already gone. I was like, okay, I'm here, but you know what? Like, I'm starting to think about something else, some other purpose. Maybe a life of service that doesn't involve cafe work, but is more purposeful in a way of, you know, a coaching environment,
Hmm.
which led me to meeting you. I reached out and I asked the universe to send me someone to help me, and out of the blue, you showed up, and the rest is history. but that period was a catalyst, I think, for what has evolved into, well, with 2025 now, a 5 year process of transformation in which I've gone from a point of a spark, which was that period there, 2020, to questions and inquiry, looking for help in the forming of yourself, a coach, starting to understand myself better, learning about the noisy neighbors, starting to explore what life might look like outside of the cafe. But hang on a minute, Mikkel, I would say to you, this is me. I'm a cafe operator. This is my identity. What am I if I don't have this? You know? Having your guidance to go through that process and start to see that there was a life beyond what I thought was just me
Mm.
was so priceless. And for that, I'll be eternally grateful for our time we had together because it's now led me to another massive transformation in my life. I left the business. I've now sold the business and moved on and started a new chapter in my life, helping other men navigate similar space, similar periods of, well, some people say midlife crisis, but I like to call it a midlife revolution. It's positive change, all right? Not always easy, but there's so much growth and so much to be garnered from taking that step, taking that step outside your comfort zone and discovering that there is more to you
Mm.
than just the paycheck. There's more to you than deadlines. There's more to you than rushing around from one thing to another. There's more than the mortgage and the house and maintaining this life that we've built around us.
Mm.
We feel it's defined us and that we're almost in a way enslaved to.
Mm.
I've had to put all that down.
Mm.
That wasn't the most pleasant experience. Letting go of that identity was a difficult thing, but I got through it because I had the tools to get through it. And I now find myself with a lot less in my life. And man, it feels lighter. It's it's like putting it all down and going, okay.
That weight off the shoulder, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. What a wonderful story, and thank you for that. And you know, from my own experience and a lot of people I work with and some of these podcast episodes with people, it seems that transformation, the biggest, most powerful transformation, always seems to come out of hardship. It always seems to come out of some shit, some stuff, some dark, whatever it is, and we get to this place of okay, something got to change here. And again, talking mental fitness, like that takes a reasonable high level of mental fitness to be able to step into that and pull that off. So again, kudos to you for doing that and for continuing that, and then now stepping into that role of serving other people. So with that, you mentioned a book. I haven't read that book myself. I know the title, but I'll make sure to put it in the show notes so people who are interested in that can find that. And I'll make sure to put your details and your awesome website for your new venture in your life after being a cafe owner for a long time. It's quite a change, and it's been beautiful for me to watch that. So. I want to acknowledge you for that. I will make sure to put those details in there. And yes, if anybody here in the audience um, uh, would like to have a chat with Lloyd, and whether you are absolutely in midlife as a male or you're a little bit on either side, I'm sure Lloyd will be happy to talk with you because it's still the same stuff. that we go through, and he's definitely got some experience and tools there to help with that. So with that, thank you so much, Lloyd, for coming on. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your willingness to share your life with other people in a way that can benefit them. Any last words you would like to tell our audience?
Oh, look, it's been an honor and a privilege being in this space with you, Mikhail. Thank you so much. And I'd just like to say to anyone out there that's thinking about making that change in their life, has got the steering in the stomach, but doesn't quite know where to start. One step in the right direction, just one. And I know that sounds cliche. When I first started, I couldn't imagine that I'd be at this stage now, but that's taken time. It's taken, small steps along the way. And then you feel like you take a couple of steps backwards, but then you take another step. And it's that process. You don't have to have it all figured out now. Just make a step. And if that looks like reaching out to someone who's been through that, I'm offering a free 30-minute consultation. Well, consultation, let's just call it a chat between two blokes, shall we? So I get a chance to meet you, you get a chance to meet me, and then we can figure out if it's a conversation we could continue. All the details are on my website, and Mikhail's kindly offered to put those in the show notes. So thank you again, Mikhail. It's been brilliant, and I've really enjoyed my time today.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you for your time and for your being.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success. If you have stories of how mental fitness has benefited you that you are happy to share, go to my website, mikhail.nz, click on podcast and fill in the guest application form. If you want direct support from me utilizing my 40 years of mental fitness learning and practice, email me at coach@mikhail.nz or message me on LinkedIn. Any feedback, review, share, follow, like, or any other good stuff is of course appreciated. Thank you for listening to Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success podcast. I'm your host, Mikhail Nielsen.